So, I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that you are the CEO of a cutting-edge tech startup.
Okay, a nice thought.
Right. And, like, you are based out in Arizona, and you have just developed this brilliant, game-changing new technology.
Yeah,
Maybe it's an autonomous drone navigation system or a revolutionary piece of cybersecurity infrastructure.
something the military obviously needs.
Exactly. You know the military needs it, and you want federal defense funding to actually scale it up.
Yeah,
So you put on your best suit, you book a flight to Washington, D.C., you march right into your senator's office.
naturally.
Yeah, and you slide your pristine pitch deck across that big mahogany desk, and you ask them to secure you a traditional earmark.
Right.
Well, based on the source material we are unpacking today, which is a really detailed strategic advisory briefing from Arsenal Government Affairs and Policy,
Huh.
you have just made the single biggest rookie mistake in Washington.
Oh, it is the ultimate record scratch moment. I mean, treating defense appropriations like conventional civilian earmarks is basically the most common strategic error made by companies trying to enter this space.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Just by asking for an earmark?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Because walking into that room and asking for an earmark, it instantly signals to the staffers, the defense officials, the politicians, that you just fundamentally misunderstand the landscape you were trying to operate in.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we really need to unpack this. The goal of our deep dive today is to reveal the hidden, like, dual track architecture of federal defense funding.
Right.
And we are going to use Arizona's massive defense ecosystem as our ultimate case study to show you how Washington actually spends its defense dollars.
It is a perfect example for this.
Yeah, because once you understand this mechanism, you essentially have a shortcut to being truly well-informed about how power and, money actually move.
And what is really fascinating about this topic is that the public's understanding of government spending is almost entirely based on a system that simply does not apply to the military.
Right, it's like a totally different rule book.
Exactly. When we peel back the layers of this advisory briefing, we're going to see why most of those triumphant press releases you see from politicians about securing defense funding are actually, legally speaking, completely invisible to the untrained eye.
That is wild. Okay, let's start with that rookie mistake from our hypothetical startup CEO.
Yeah, let's break that down.
To understand how defense funding actually works, we basically first have to unlearn almost everything we think we know about government spending. Because when normal people, or like even local city councils, think about getting money from Congress for a project, they're picturing the classic earmark.
Wow.
But those actually have very specific formal names in the modern system, don't they?
They do. So on the House of Representatives side, they're called community project funding, or CPF.
Okay.
And in the Senate, the exact same mechanism is called congressionally directed spending, or CDS.
Got it. CPF and CDS.
Right. And these are genuine, incredibly valuable tools for local governance. If you are a mayor looking to build, say, a new highway bypass, or a nonprofit trying to upgrade a community health
Our
center.
local civilian projects.
Exactly. This is the exact lever you pull.
And the reason these are so familiar to people is because they are highly visible, right? Like they have named recipients.
Yes, very public.
So if a city asks for money for a new subsidized housing complex, the money flows through a civilian account like the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD.
Right.
You apply, and if you win, the exact dollar amount, the name of your specific town, and the project description are printed right there in a public subcommittee table. Like anyone can look it up.
Oh, absolutely. And the money usually has a strict one-year availability. Like, it has to be spent now, it's clean, visible, and totally transparent.
But defense appropriations operate in this sort of parallel universe.
Completely different universe, yeah. They're categorically different.
Mm-hmm.
They are governed by an entirely separate legal framework, specifically Title 10 of the U.S. Code, Section 114.
Section 114, okay.
Right. And under this defense framework, funding absolutely does not flow to named corporate recipients. It flows to broad program accounts.
Broad accounts, okay. Not specific companies.
Exactly. And the money isn't executed by civilian agencies like HUD or the Department of Transportation. It is executed by Department of Defense components.
Like the branches themselves?
Yeah, the specific military service branches or, their internal research labs.
I was trying to wrap my head around this difference when I was reading the briefing, and it feels like civilian earmarks are essentially a wedding registry.
Oh, that's an interesting way to put it.
Right, like you go online, you pick out a specific named blender for a specific person, you buy it, and your name is publicly attached to it for everyone to see. Like, congratulations from Congress, here is your blender.
Yeah, I like that. That is a great way to look at civilian spending. It's highly transactional, highly public,
Right.
but defense funding is much more restrictive. To build on your analogy, it is basically like a massive grocery budget, but with very specific dietary restrictions.
Okay, a grocery budget. Walk me through that.
So Congress gives the military, say, $50 million for their kitchen, but instead of buying a specific meal from a specific named restaurant,
Which would be the earmark.
right, instead, Congress drops the $50 million into a broad account and slips a quiet little sticky note into the budget that says, hey, when you go shopping for your ingredients, try to buy from this local farm.
Wait, okay, so if I'm that startup CEO and a senator issues a press release back in Arizona claiming they secured $50 million for next-gen drone research,
Yeah.
if I go look at the public ledger, I'm not going to see my company's name.
You will not find it. Nowhere.
Wow.
And this is the aha moment that trips up so many seasoned business leaders. The money sits in a massive generalized program account. The specific direction from Congress, like the little sticky note I mentioned, is quietly embedded in a committee report or a joint explanatory statement.
Not the main bill.
No, these are companion documents to the actual law.
Yeah.
So the senator's press release is entirely true. They did secure the funding direction.
But I can't see it.
Right. The mechanism is totally invisible
Right.
to an outside observer who is just, scrolling through the legislation, expecting to see a classic named earmark.
Wow. Okay, so if the money doesn't go to a named company on a public list, it has to go into specific internal buckets within the Pentagon.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding exactly which bucket you're asking for seems like the crucial next step. The source material refers to these buckets as the colors of money.
Yes, the colors of money.
What does that actually mean in practice?
So the colors of money represent legal availability periods. It dictates how long the military agency has to actually spend the money before it legally expires and just, vanishes.
Like a ticking clock.
Exactly. And they are not interchangeable. Misidentifying the correct funding category is literally a fatal error for a startup.
Let's walk through these buckets then, because the time frames actually make a lot of sense when you think about what the military is doing on a daily basis.
Right.
So you have operations and maintenance, or O&M, and military personnel, which is MILPers. And the memo says those both last just 1 year.
Right, because those represent daily consumable realities.
Like what?
Operations and maintenance covers the gas in the Humvees, the electricity on the base, day-to-day repairs. And MILPers covers salaries and health care for the troops.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, you don't need a 5-year budget window to pay a soldier's salary for this current year. It is immediate short-term money.
Right, and then you have procurement, which lasts 3 to 5 years, depending on the project.
Exactly. Think about the physical reality of procurement. This is the bucket for buying major tangible weapon systems.
Like ships and planes.
Yeah, if the Navy is buying a new class of submarine or an aircraft carrier, you cannot just write a check and have it delivered in 12 months.
No, of course not.
It takes half a decade to bend the steel, integrate the nuclear reactor, and launch the ship. So the money has to stay legally valid for that entire construction period.
Okay, that's logical.
And the same goes for military construction, or MILCON. That lasts 5 years for building major facilities or runways.
But okay, if I am our hypothetical tech startup CEO, I'm not building an aircraft carrier, and I am definitely not paying troop salaries.
Right.
Where do I fit in?
Well, for tech and innovation clients, the absolute holy grail is RDT&E.
RDT&E.
Yes, that stands for Research Development, Test, and Evaluation.
Why is RDT&E the magic bucket for startups?
Because it is specifically designed to tolerate the messy reality of technology maturation. Like, it is built for prototyping, software coding, and true innovation.
Oh, so it accounts for trial and error.
Exactly. It perfectly aligns with what tech companies and university labs actually do.
Yeah.
You are going to test things, they're going to fail, you are going to iterate, and try again.
Makes sense.
And because of that, RDT&E has a 2-year obligation window, which gives a startup the necessary breathing room to actually execute a development contract without the panic of a strict 1-year expiration date.
Okay, so you find your color of money. You know you need that 2-year RDT&E bucket. But here is where the architecture gets really, really dense.
It does.
To actually get this money, you have to navigate the dual track system.
Yeah, the dual-track maze.
Right. There are two parallel tracks happening at the same time in Congress. First, you have the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, which goes through the Armed Services Committees,
Hmm.
and then you have the Defense Appropriations Act. But I have to stop here because reading through this part of the briefing, I was genuinely confused.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. Because it sounds like I can be legally authorized by Congress to build my technology, but still have absolutely $0 in my bank account to actually do it. How is that even mathematically possible?
Well, it is entirely possible, and honestly, it happens all the time.
Really?
Oh yeah, this is a complexity that has almost no equivalent in civilian funding. The NDAA, the authorization, track sets the policy. It is Congress officially saying, yes, the military is allowed to pursue this technology.
Okay.
But the Defense Appropriations Act is what actually provides the budget, authority-like, the legal permission to actually obligate the cash. Think of authorization like passing your driving test at the DMV.
Okay, so I passed the test, I have my license, I am legally authorized to drive.
Precisely. But the DMV does not hand you the keys to a car. The Appropriations Committee is the car dealership. If you do not survive their distinct process, you are just standing in your driveway holding a piece of plastic. You are authorized to drive, but you are going nowhere.
That is brutal.
It is. And on the flip side, if you somehow convince the dealership to give you a car, which is appropriation, but you never went to the DMV for your authorization.
You're driving illegally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Driving that car is going to get you in massive legal trouble.
So you literally have to win both. You have to get the license and the car simultaneously.
Yes. The only way to survive this maze is to align across both tracks. And to do that, a company essentially has to pass through 4 distinct gates.
Okay, what are the 4 gates?
Gate 1 is mission framing. You have to prove you are enabling a critical defense capability.
Okay.
Gate 2 is congressional direction, where a committee member actually embeds your language into those invisible reports we talked about earlier.
Sticky notes.
Right. Then Gate 3 is securing the right account and funding vehicle, basically making sure you are in that 2-year RDT&E bucket and not accidentally trapped in a 1-year O&M bucket.
Okay.
And finally, Gate 4 is agency execution, where the actual Department of Defense branch agrees to write the contract.
Okay, so to see how this complex 4-gate dual-track machine operates in the real world, the source material applies this entire framework to one specific state.
Right, Arizona.
Yeah, Arizona, which is a perfect case study because Arizona is basically built on aerospace and defense.
Oh, it is an incredibly defense-intensive state. The board is just loaded with high-value pieces.
Let's map this out because
Yeah.
it's not just a random list of bases, right? These are strategic assets for our startup CEO.
Exactly.
So you have Luke Air Force Base, which is the largest F-35 training base in the entire world. You have Davis-Monthan Air Force Base down in Tucson, which has A-10s, drone operations, and AMARD.
The boneyard.
Right, the boneyard. It's the nation's only aircraft boneyard with over 3,000 planes sitting out in the desert. Then there's Fort Huachuca, the Army's premier intelligence and cyber center, and Marine Corps Air Station Yuma, which connects to the massive Goldwater Range.
Right. And you might ask, why does all that geography matter to our startup CEO?
Yeah, why does it?
Because bases provide the ultimate mission justification for Gate 1.
Mission framing.
Yes. If your startup is building a new drone sensor, you don't just need a shiny laboratory. You need to be able to point to the drone operators at Davis-Monthan and say, look, we are testing this directly with the warfighters in our backyard, and they need this exact capability.
Oh, so the physical bases provide the why for the funding request.
Exactly.
That makes total sense. And then you add the industrial base into the mix to prove you can actually manufacture the tech, right?
Right.
Because you have absolute giants anchoring the state. Raytheon, which is now RTX in Tucson, producing Tomahawk, Stinger, and Javelin missiles. Boeing and Mesa building the Apache attack helicopters. Honeywell Aerospace in Phoenix.
And having those prime contractors nearby completely validates the ecosystem. Shows Congress that if they fund a startup's prototype through RDT&E, there is a mature industrial base right down the highway ready to actually help scale it up for mass production.
And it is all backed up by major university partners supplying the talent and initial research, too. Like the University of Arizona is doing massive DoD-funded research in optics and sensors.
Yeah, huge programs there.
Arizona State University is expanding heavily into AI and cybersecurity. Embry-Riddle is focusing on applied aviation engineering. It is just this massive web of capability.
Which brings us to the political players, because it's their job to translate all that capability into actual funding on those two tracks we talked about.
Right, the congressional delegation.
Yes. You have Senator Mark Kelly, who is a former Navy combat pilot and astronaut, sitting on the Senate Armed Services Committee.
So he's on the authorization track.
Exactly. Then you have Representative Juan Ciscomani on the House Appropriations Committee.
The money track.
Right. Plus Representatives Ruben Gallego, David Schweikert, and Greg Stanton, all bringing different aerospace or defense readiness backgrounds to the table.
But looking at the architecture of the system in the briefing, Arizona actually has a massive blind spot here.
They really do.
Despite having all of this hardware, the industry, the troops, and the universities, they lack a single member on the Senate Defense Appropriations Subcommittee.
And that is a critical vulnerability for them.
Just to give some context to how big a deal that is, this specific subcommittee, which is chaired by Senator McConnell, with members like Coons, Collins, Graham, and Hoeven, is the actual drafting room for the defense spending bill. It is the most powerful single room for state-level defense funding, and Arizona isn't in it. They basically don't have a seat at the dealership to get the car.
Exactly. And so how do you win the game when you are locked out of the main drafting room?
Yeah, what do?
This is where the strategy of really understanding the dual-track system becomes paramount. Because Arizona clients lack a seat at that Senate appropriations table, they cannot rely on a simple backroom handshake.
Yeah.
They have to push overwhelmingly hard on the tracks they actually do control.
Right, they have to surround the weakness. So they use Senator Kelly's position on the Armed Services Committee to absolutely dominate the authorization track.
Yes, getting their priorities hardwired into the NDAA.
Getting the DMV license locked down.
Exactly. And simultaneously, they have to use Representative Ciscomani's seat on the House Appropriations Committee to build an airtight funding case on the House side of the dealership.
So they build this technically sound, heavily justified case on the tracks they control.
Right. And the goal is to make it so strong that it eventually forces the Senate's hand during the final end-of-year negotiations.
Oh, I see.
You basically make your project so undeniably aligned with military needs that the Senate committee can't ignore it, even if you don't have a senator physically sitting in the room.
So knowing the board like this massive Arizona ecosystem and knowing the rules of the dual track system still isn't quite enough.
No, it's not.
You have to know when and how to actually make your move. And this is where the playbook meets the calendar.
The timeline for this process is totally unforgiving. And honestly, it starts much earlier than most people realize. The cycle kicks off in February when the president submits the annual budget request.
Okay, so that establishes the baseline for the entire year.
Exactly.
It's basically the starting gun for the marathon.
Yep. Then, from March through May, you enter hearings and engagement season. And this is the vital window.
Why is it so vital?
Because subcommittees are holding hearings with top military leaders, asking them what they need to fight future wars. This is the exact moment when our startup CEO needs to be submitting technical data and policy papers to their delegation.
Oh, to actually shape the official congressional record.
Yes, because in June and July, you hit the markup period. Both the House and the Senate are drafting their versions of the bill and finalizing that invisible report language, those sticky notes we discussed.
Right.
So summer is the hard deadline for client-specific direction.
Which means if you wait until October 1st, when the new fiscal year actually begins, you are entirely out of luck.
Oh, completely.
Especially because October 1st often brings a continuing resolution, or a CR, right?
Right. A continuing resolution is Congress failing to pass a new budget, so they just freeze government funding at the previous year's levels.
Which sounds bad for startups.
It halts all new innovation projects because the military is legally barred from starting new initiatives under a CR.
Wow. So if I am that startup CEO, and I wait until the summer when the evening news actually starts talking about the defense budget being debated on the floor, what happens to my pitch deck?
It's useless. You are effectively trying to join a marathon at mile 20 without ever registering for the race, paying the entry fee, or doing any of the actual training.
The officials at the finish line are definitely not going to give you a medal.
No, they are not. Defense appropriations are a sustained, multi-year campaign. It is never a transactional one-time ask. You cannot just show up in July and ask for a check.
Because Congress does not fund companies.
Exactly. They fund warfighter capabilities. Yeah. If your pitch sounds like a local economic development grant if you walk in and say, funding my drone project will create 50 great high-paying jobs in Phoenix.
Which sounds good to a local mayor.
Sure. But to defense appropriators, you will fail immediately.
Mm.
You have to prove how your specific technology solves a documented capability gap for the Department of Defense. The jobs are a nice byproduct, but the mission is literally the only currency that matters.
And even if you do everything right, like you run the marathon, you get authorized by the Armed Services Committee, you get appropriated by the House, you survive the Senate negotiations, and you get that invisible sticky note placed in the committee report, you still aren't done.
Nope. Gate 4, agency execution.
Right.
And this requires year-round engagement, because even with congressional direction, the money still sits in an agency account.
So the military branch actually has the cash?
Yes. And if the relevant DoD component, like DARPA or the Air Force Research Lab, if they do not fundamentally support your project, or if they just don't trust your technical credibility, they simply will not execute the contract.
Wait, really? They can just say no?
They will just let the money sit there until it legally expires. You have to win over the politicians in Congress and the scientists in the military agency simultaneously.
That is incredibly intense. Let's zoom out and look at the whole picture then. Federal defense funding is absolutely not an economic handout, and it is definitely not a civilian earmark.
Not at all.
It is a highly complex, dual-track, mission-driven architecture. It requires precise alignment with military capability needs. It requires understanding the physical reality of the colors of money. So, to ask for a 2-year RDT&E account instead of a 1-year O&M account. And it requires a disciplined year-round campaign strategy that survives both authorization and appropriation.
All while navigating the specific political strengths and geographical blind spots of your state's delegation, utilizing local bases for mission justification and local industry for manufacturing credibility.
It's like playing three-dimensional chess.
It really is.
So whether you are actually prepping for a high-stakes meeting in the defense sector, or you are just insanely curious about how Washington actually functions behind closed doors, knowing the architecture behind this spending is basically a superpower. It makes you immune to political spin. When you see a press release about defense dollars flowing into your state, you now know exactly what invisible machinery had to turn across multiple branches of government to make that happen.
And the machinery is incredibly specialized. Securing defense funding requires a deep understanding of lobbying mechanics just to survive the dual-track maze without making a fatal error.
Right.
Which leaves us with a rather profound question to consider. If the system is this opaque and the rules are this complex and unforgiving, how many brilliant, game-changing innovations are currently sitting on the sidelines, completely unfunded, simply because a brilliant team of engineers didn't know the difference between a civilian earmark and an RDT&E account?